And we're back. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thanks a lot for joining Voice of Europe. This is Lucian Vâlsan, broadcasting from Cluj-Napoca, Transylvania. As always, alongside with me is Herr Jon Gunnarsson, broadcasting from Deutschland, and our producer, James Huff, lurking in the background and making sure everything works just fine. Hi there, Jon.
Hello there. How are things going?
Things are going not so nice. I've had a horrible week with several financial issues, several weather issues, and now my tap in the bathroom has become broken. And considering how hot it is outside, it's going to be quite fun to have a shower after the show. Yeah, but other than that, things are going well.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But things are going better here. I've recovered from the cold I had last week, and the weather is a bit too warm for my taste, but it's still okay. So I'm doing fine.
It's hot as hell here. I mean, all the doors are open and still I can barely breathe. Hopefully by the first hour of this show, things will get, the atmosphere will get breathable. Anyway, okay, then I guess we can start with the news, because, yeah, in the second part we'll talk about trigger warnings, so go ahead.
Okay, the first one is from the Independent, from the United Kingdom. Men accept unfairness from pretty women, study finds. Males are more likely to tolerate unfair offers from females if they are attractive, a study into the effects of beauty on our responses has claimed. In The Undermining Effect of Facial Attractiveness and Brain Responses to Fairness in the Ultimatum Game, published in the journal Frontiers in Neuroscience, researchers investigated, quote, the time course of the neural processing of facial attractiveness and its influence on fairness consideration during social interactions, unquote. Male participants were shown images of attractive and unattractive female faces as ranked by a separate group, each proposing how to split a 10-pounder between herself and the responder in a deal responders were told actually existed. After analyzing the data, the co-authors came up with this conclusion. To summarize, the beauty premium influenced responder fairness during the ultimatum game. Unfair offers from attractive female allocators were more acceptable to the male subjects. The males presented with fluctuating reaction times to the 5 offers in comparison with the stable reaction pattern in the unattractive face condition. The event-related potentialist data supported the behavioral findings. In the early feedback-rated negativity, FRN, and late stages of outcome evaluation, the subject's fairness consideration was undermined by the beauty premium, which resulted in null FRN effects in the attractive face condition. Additionally, the time course of brain responses to facial attractiveness illustrated that attractive faces elicited a decreased early negativity and an enhanced late positive potential compared with unattractive faces. End quote. The assumptions drew criticism, however, with one commenter suggesting that participants could have taken longer to respond because they simply enjoyed looking at attractive faces.
What a commonsensical remark at the end of the article. Yeah, I think we've covered this topic last show as well.
Did we?
This topic in the sense of we tend to like beautiful people more, and therefore we're willing to put up with things from them, and we would hire them more often and whatnot. On the other hand, it depends. It really does depend on the level, on the difference. Because indeed, if the difference is not high, then the participants could have taken longer to respond, probably because they simply enjoyed looking at the subjects. On the other hand, I really tend to think that this is not sex specific. I mean, I really do think that it applies to women. Maybe not in a similar fashion, but I think women would put up a bit more with from a handsome man. I mean, I can think that the average woman would put up with something nasty from Brad Pitt as opposed to the first homeless guy.
Yeah, I think that's true as well. No, as far as I understand it, the difference was not just that they hesitated for longer when the attractive woman made the unfair offer, but they also were more likely to eventually accept those offers, and that can't really be explained just by they liked looking
Fair enough.
at the pretty pictures, so they hesitated longer.
Fair enough.
So I guess this is a real effect, though this sort of time response thing is perhaps not all that significant.
Hmm.
No, I would
Yeah.
just like to point out how badly written this article is. It's
Yes.
basically just quoting from this paper, and it's just using this very technical language that's difficult to understand, and it
Yes.
was just like a really lazy journalist who just spent maybe like 15 minutes on this, just copy paste more or less, and just added a few
15.
sentences here and there.
You're being generous with the 15. I could write this in 3. I mean, come on. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Using words like null FRN, that's not something that the average Joe
Yeah,
can understand. What the hell is null FRN? I know what it is, but again, most people don't. And yeah. What I am interested more is in how many subjects did it have. I mean, how relevant is. I mean, if the study had the 100 subject, I guess the relevancy is smaller. The study had, I don't know, 1,000 subjects.
yeah. It also says nothing at all about effect size. Just says
Hmm.
that they were more likely to accept these offers and it took them longer, but how much? That's really relevant. It's just some sort of tiny effect that is just significant because they have a large study, or because they have a large study with a lot of subjects, or is it just a huge effect that's even noticeable with a few subjects? That's interesting to know.
Hmm. Yeah, and it says in the article. I hope it's a mistake, but it says how to split 10 yen, not 10 pounds.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
sort of stumbling over that as well. But
and
is
now I look
10
into.
yen like a really tiny sum?
Yeah, and not only it's a tiny sum, but it also raises another question: Does it has the study been made in Japan? And if yes, does this effect apply in other cultures as well? Because let's face it, the Japanese culture is significantly different than what we would expect in Europe.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
And the sex relationships, the relationship between the sexes is significantly different in Japan. Uh, so yeah, I mean, does this apply to Europe, or maybe it's a mistake from one of the many mistakes from this journalist that it was really 10 pounds as opposed to 10 yen? And yeah, very good point from you. I mean, how significant is? I mean, would a man be more likely to accept a divide like 40%, 6 pounds to the girl and 4 pounds for him, or is a man more likely to accept from a cute girl even a divide something like 90-10? Because if it's 51-49, it's not really that relevant. If it's 90-10, well, it is. So yeah, it doesn't say, and yeah, it kind of leaves us in a limbo with this.
Yeah, it's just this article just doesn't explain anything. Doesn't even explain what an ultimatum game is, for example. It's
Mm-hmm.
something
Mm-hmm.
that many people know that, but many people also don't. It's
Mm-hmm.
something
Mm-hmm.
that should really be explained in an article like that. But let's move on. I
Yep.
just
Yep.
expect our audience to be more educated than the average independent reader, but okay.
Yep. Actually, I do expect that.
Pretty sure that's true. Okay, let's go on to the Daily Mail. Some more high quality journalism there, of course. Um, Parents' fury as hit film tells little girls. Fatness is sad, being thin is joy. With its colorful animated characters personifying the different emotions inside a young girl's brain, it's one of the biggest movie box office hits this year. But although Inside Out has enthralled youngsters, the latest film from Toy Story maker Pixar stands accused of causing psychological damage by depicting sadness as a fat child. The film focuses on 11-year-old Riley and her feelings as she moves home with her parents. Her emotions, also including anger, fear, disgust, and joy, are portrayed as characters in the film, which has won critical acclaim in the US and opens in the UK later this month. But parents have raised concerns over sadness, voiced by actress Phyllis Smith, being depicted as a frumpy fat girl, while Joy, played by Amy Poehler, is slim and fashionable. Parents have taken to online forums, with one writing, "Thin, tall and pretty is Joy. Indoctrinate your children." Another wrote, "We get young, impressionable girls associating anything but petite figures with unhappiness." Experts have echoed these concerns. Leading British child psychotherapist Dilys Dawes said, "It's a pity that sad character is also labeled as being fat, as that means that being fat is sad. You could say it's supporting the message of over-slim models and adverts where everybody looks slimmer than is natural, which then becomes thought of as the happy ideal. Children in general seem to think thinner is better." Child and adolescent therapist Rachel Melvers Thomas said, "The Joy character is like Tinkerbell. She is relentlessly happy, and as a child she is obviously the one you are drawn to. Sadness is portrayed as a party pooper. It's a bit simplistic." She said the film also portrayed fear as wimpy and anger as an idiot, which risked strongly representing the way many children feel their true emotions. But Miss Melville Thomas and Miss Dawes praised the film's message that children should be allowed to feel sadness in order to develop and grow up. Miss Melville Thomas said, "It's absolutely essential that children are allowed to be sad. We are in an instant fix culture where we want children to snap out of it. It's really important we understand things like sadness or fear or anger so that a child feels listened to." Pixar, which is owned by Disney, did not respond to requests from the Mail on Sunday for a comment.
Yeah. Yeah, that portion is actually correct. We live in an instant fix culture where we want children to just snap out of it. I guess that's the only sane part in this article. Yeah, I mean, the rest of the article reads like is astonishing to me. I mean, really, do we now expect children to be so idiotic that they can't understand that it's a fucking fiction movie?
Yeah, and it's just really astonishing that these people complain about this cartoon film simplifying things. It's cartoon for children. I mean, yeah,
it's supposed to simplify things.
That's true of basically every film that's made for children. And I mean, it's just true for films made for adults also, of course, in basically all cases. And it really should not surprise us that Pixar cannot express all the nuances of human emotion in this film. I mean, it's absurd. Of course, they're going to simplify things, and that's just what you have to do in fiction.
Yeah, and it's a cartoon, for crying out loud. The purpose of any cartoon is to simplify things. And on the other hand, you have to balance it with the market request, I mean, in order to get cash out of it. So, yeah, you're going to simplify things and make it, keep it stupid and simple, so you can get a broader audience and, make a profit out of that particular cartoon.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
Of course, in reality, people have more than 5 emotions. But if you want to have this idea of portraying the emotions as characters, you can't have a cast of 20 characters or 100 characters representing every subtle shade of human emotion. It just doesn't work. You just have to work with a handful of simple characters of important simple emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Otherwise, this idea just doesn't work.
Yeah, and even on the message itself, considering the market to which is intended, because let's face it, the cartoon is not intended for the children in Kenya. It's intended for a market where children tend to be, in many cases, a bit too fat. This is a reality. I mean, let's not forget, this is less true in Europe, but more true in North America. We're in a situation where the poorest of the poor are fat. So I don't think that the message itself is necessarily wrong. And I certainly don't buy this, that, but it can create trauma, or what is it says here? It creates where the hell is it? Yeah, it indoctrinates children. Come on, give me a fucking break. I grew up with the cartoons meant to indoctrinate, made by the Soviet Union, crying out loud, and no, it didn't work. So no, I'm sorry, I'm not buying this. I'm not buying the so-called experts argument. I just think it's bollocks.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just in general, you know, slim people are happier than fat people. It's not true in all cases, but as a sort of a generalization, it's true. Because, you know, being overweight is unhealthy. It's bad for you. And so...
And again, not in all cases, but in most of them.
Yeah. And, you know, on average, you know, fat girls are less happy than slim girls. It's just a fact. Sorry if that offends you.
Yeah, and I don't know, I haven't seen the cartoon, but I think it's a bit an exaggeration to claim that, oh, but it creates the image of thinner than it's natural. I don't think so. I think children are not that stupid. Most children.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I've watched the trailer on that that's underneath the article there, and you know, this Joy character, she's thin, but she's not anorexic or anything like that. She's just sort of healthy looking and maybe a bit on the thin side, but certainly not in an unhealthy way.
Oh, I didn't have the curiosity to watch the trailer, but yeah, I mean, I pretty much what I expected. I don't think Disney would go to that extent to promote such things, precisely because they want to keep a market share and they want to be attractive to their purported audience. And believe it or not, children are not idiots. Extremely bizarre, they're less likely to watch it.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one is with the clickbait title. Coming also from the UK, from the Mirror. Budget 2015, raped moms could have to prove they were assaulted to claim tax credits. Wah, smjörk. Rape campaigners fear victims will have to prove they were violated to stop the Tories clawing back their tax credit. The blunt warning has been sparkled by the budget's £12 billion sledgehammer of welfare cuts, which experts say will hit Britain's poor hardest. Where are those experts? Coming from The Guardian, I guess, because, yeah. Anyway, George Osborne is scrapping child tax credits worth up to £2.78 billion, 2,780 pounds for each youngster for all but the first two children. He insists any mom who has had a third child due to rape or other exceptional circumstances will still be paid the benefits. But campaigners have told Mirror Online that the Chancellor's vow to is full of holes and leaves more questions than it answers. It's because the government still hasn't worked out how it will decide which women have been raped. If the victims have to wait for their attacker to be convicted in court, many will be left high and dry. Well, so what? Bullshit intensifies. Just 60% of rape cases brought to court and end in a conviction. Well, that means 40% of the cases are, at the very least, without evidence. Anyway, and that's without counting the thousands of women too scared to approach the police or those who have their cases dropped. Well, okay. Furious SNP MPs Alison Thewlis, I think, and Kirsten Oswald have slammed the move. Ms. Oswald claims that it is incredibly distasteful, while Ms. Thewlis said it left her utterly furious. It's the latest flaw to be revealed in the Tories' welfare cuts. Disabled and sick people on the ESA benefit will stop having their benefits protected if they get a job for more than 12 weeks. Well, I agree with the MP. The welfare state in this manner disincentivizes work, but I guess that's not what the SNP lady wanted to say. Anyway. And the tax credit loophole means thousands of existing three-child families will be hit despite Tory vows to protect them. Again, so what? Rape crisis spokesman Katie Russell said at the first sight the plan seems unworkable. Will women be required to produce evidence that their child was conceived through rape, and who will assess the evidence? Many of the women we work with at Rape Crisis have only sought the kind of confidential, independent, and specialist support we offer after years or even decades. They have sometimes never told even their partner or closest friends of their experiences. It seems unlikely that many sexual violence survivors will be willing to disclose to a government official. And the article even goes on and on like that. No, I don't have anything to say. I say just tough shit. I genuinely don't care. I don't think it is. I mean, this individual from the rape crisis clients never told anyone or seek help after decades. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't think the government is supposed to believe you just on your word because you say, oh, I was raped 20 years ago and that's why I have a third child. It doesn't work that way. Or if it does, it doesn't mean you're automatically supposed to get welfare from everyone else just because you say so. I'm sorry, but it shouldn't supposed to work that way.
Yeah, giving people money for saying they've been raped seems like a perfect recipe to produce all sorts of false allegations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
not to mention that Britain gives something like £12,000, or I think they've cut it a little bit now, and probably the Tories will cut it entirely now, for anyone who says he's been raped. And Mike Buchanan talked about this at length in multiple interviews, that the fact that essentially the British state incentivizes rape allegations. If you subsidize something, you're going to get more of that something. Is it really that complicated?
Yeah, but these people want to get more rape allegations. That's the point of these subsidies, of course.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Basically, the thinking there is that people now don't report when they've actually been raped, so we give them money, and then this incentive will sort of cancel out the disincentive of being questioned by police and going through all that hassle, and then the people who have actually been raped will come forward, which, fair enough, that's probably true, but you also get people coming forward who've never been raped and just want to get attention, or they want to get back at I don't know, maybe a man who scorned them, or a boyfriend who left them, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you also incentivize these people to come forward and to make these allegations, and that's really going to undermine the credibility of actual rape victims. Not to speak of putting all these innocent men through this legal hell, and losing their jobs probably, and ruining their personal life and so on.
Yeah, and some of them may even end up convicted for a while, although, to be fair, this has started to happen less and less. I mean, most of the innocent rape convicts that we see now being set free are cases that are a decade old or even more. The newer ones seem to be less and less likely, and that's a good news, or maybe it's just a false good news because we haven't discovered the newer ones. But yeah, I don't know. I just tend to look with a lot of suspicion and mostly with a disbelief on anyone who claims sexual assault like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I just tend not to believe it because it's an unfalsifiable claim in most of the cases.
Yeah,
but also, I don't remember what I was doing on August 5th, 2004. How is an old man supposed to remember what he was doing on August 5th, 1974? Come on.
Yeah, definitely.
It does sound unfalsifiable to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, also let me just say how utterly insignificant this is. Like, they act as if this is some huge crisis or huge problem, but it's really just a case of people on welfare getting who already have 2 children and then get a third child through being raped, getting additional welfare payments. Like, how many cases of that are there in the UK?
And also those who have 3 kids and one of them is claimed to have been conceived through rape, because it's also retroactive. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, but again, your point still stands. How many of such cases could be? I mean, I understand Britain is a large population-wise, but still, how many such cases could be? I don't think it's too many of them. I really don't. And again, in many of those cases, maybe there is already a conviction in place, in which case they won't be affected, as per the government and as per even the opposition admits it. So, I don't know. Yeah, you're probably right. The whole issue is probably less significant than they make it to be in this article.
Yeah, and also if you're raped and you have a child to that, you can get an abortion, you can put the child up for adoption if you don't want it, etc. So it's not like you're forced to have this child you can't afford.
Yes, absolutely. And, yeah, I mean, rape victims already have all the choices they need. They don't need further incentives. And I'm sorry, but even if it sounds very offensive, but if you're not willing to, you get pregnant, you give birth to a child, and you still don't report it on the police, or you only report it to some bullshit rape crisis NGO who has incentives to boost the rape numbers, I'm sorry, but that falls on you as the victim. Because if you don't report it, you essentially let a criminal loose.
Yep.
And there should be some responsibility on these kinds of victims, both male and female, because there are also men who are raped and who proceed in a similar manner, and they come forward 10 or 20 years later. I'm sorry, but it's less believable. Anyway, the offense police has heard. Anyway, go ahead with the next one.
Okay, this one is from Germany, from the Ärzte-Zeitung. Men desperately wanted. In East Frisia and in many other places, dentists are becoming scarce. Now the Lower Saxonian chapter of the Free Association of German Dentists, or FVDZ, has called for an unusual remedy against the dwindling of surgeries. A men's quota for university enrollment for dentistry. Their reasoning: men had the required grit to lead a surgery on their own. Quote, because of the way enrollment is handled, there are now some years with 100% female students. The motion statement of grounds reads, because young women are able to present better Abitur marks, and Abitur is the sort of final exam you get when completing the gymnasium, which is the sort of highest form of secondary education.
Eighth grade, essentially?
No, it's 11th and 12th grade.
Oh, okay, so essentially high school graduation in most of Europe.
Yeah, basically, yeah, that. And the grades for that are basically made up by the grades you get during the last 2 years of school, plus an exam at the end, and something like 2/3 of that is the grades you get throughout the 2 years.
Sounds like a similar system in here. It's essentially the SAT, which is called baccalaureate, just like in France, and it also combines the graduation average. Anyway, it doesn't really matter.
It's basically somewhat equivalent to the baccalaureate. Okay, where was I? Yes, because young women are able to present better Abitur marks, they have the advantage in securing the much sought-after university places. Depending on the university, the numerus clausus lies between 1.2 and 1.7. Again, a bit of explanation. The numerus clausus is basically the minimum grade you need to study a particular subject, and as for those grades, German grades...
1 is the highest, 5 is the lowest.
1 is the best, and 6 is the worst.
Oh, 6, so, sorry.
1.2, that's basically something like the top 5% or something like that. Or at least that's sort of how it was in Bavaria, where I went to school. I don't know how it's up there because the standard generally tend to be a bit lower. So I don't know. It works like a market, the association says. The lower the supply of university places, the higher the price in terms of Abitur grade. End quote. And skipping a bit here, according to data by the Federal Chamber of Dentists, there were only a little over 4,500 men among the almost 12,900 people who studied dentistry during the winter semester of 2013-14. All these young female dentists would hesitate to accept the risk of founding or taking over a surgery. Annette Appel, a dentist from Göttingen and the chairwoman of the association in Lower Saxony, told Ärztezeitung. These young women want to have children. Apparently fewer and fewer women actually end up practicing dentistry. After a childcare break, only 30 to 35% of female dentists find their way back into dental practice, Appel explains. Again, skipping a bit, to make it short, first women take up all the university places and then they don't work in the jobs they've been trained in, let alone found their own surgery. The result is a pervasive lack of dentists. Quote, the model of a surgery run by a single dentist is still the most widespread, Appel says, but for how long? Here in the Rheinland, there are now only 8 dentists who have to care for about 30,000 people, says dentist Dr. Ulrich Keck from Wiener in East Frisia. This is unacceptable. This is a catastrophe. Actually, there should be twice as many dentists. And he hasn't included himself in that count since the 60-year-old is closing his surgery and hasn't found a successor. We received new sanitary regulations, Keck explains. To comply with them, I would have to invest 100,000 euros. I don't have the money and don't want to borrow it at my age. Even if female dentists were to alleviate the lack of personnel, quote, we can't count on them taking over the surgery one day, Keck says. Women don't want that anymore. An alternative are treatment centers, or MVZs, which several employed dentists. But MVZs are often administered in an uneconomic way, Keck argues, because no one ultimately feels the same kind of responsibility as in his own surgery. Moreover, Keck, a man of the old guard, thinks the way an MVZ is organized destroys the personal relationship between doctor and patient. And that's all I'm going to read from this because it's really long and I think we sort of get the gist.
Yeah, it seems to me that the regulations are more of a problem than the lack of dentists. I mean, this guy, I'm sorry, Kick. Anyway, he said, well, we get more and more regulations, and only to comply with those, it would cost me 100,000 euros. So I think the regulations also play a part in it. On the other hand, it's not really a surprise, is it? Isn't it?
In what way?
The fact that women take up a significant proportion of the university places and they get qualifications for that, and then they don't work in that field in quite significant numbers. It's not really a shock. I'm surprised that this is a new phenomenon to this author.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. Like especially if you're becoming a dentist, that's you have to study for a very long time for that. It basically, to become a dentist, you're basically in school one way or another for something like 20 years, and if you then just work for a couple of years and then basically retire to become a housewife, that's just very uneconomical. And I mean, if you or your parents come up with that money to send you to school and to university, and you pay all of that yourself, it's your own money, you can do with what you want, and no problem with that. But if it's all in a state-funded school and university, where
is in Germany,
which it almost always is in Germany, where the taxpayers pay for you to become educated, presumably so that you can then have they can then be better qualified and provide more valuable services to society. But if you then just decide to become a mother instead, it's sort of a problem. It undermines the whole system, and if you basically just go to university to find a husband or something, or just to
Have fun.
to amuse yourself or something, that's a real problem, and I don't really know how to address that within the system of quote-unquote free education that we have in Germany.
Yeah, one more thing that it needs to be said. I'm not, for starters, I'm not convinced that a men's quota would solve this. Secondly, I'm not convinced that this is a sexism issue. I mean, this 60-year-old guy says, well, women don't want to do this anymore, which is to say that there was a significant period of time in the past when they wanted to, which pretty much falls into the argument made by the Norwegian guys when they made that absolutely stunning documentary called Brainwash, Jarnevast, in which they essentially said that whenever women have more choices, the more choices they have, the more gender-specific choices they make, as opposed to when they have less choices, they make more economically sound choices, which pretty much explains the trend why there's more women interested in mathematics in India per capita than in Sweden or in Norway. Maybe the society has improved so much that now it's no longer worth it for women to be dentists, surgeons, or what is there. Because he says women don't want to do this anymore, which means there was a period when it didn't matter that 100% or 90% of the spots were taken by women.
I don't know about that. I think maybe it's just that in the past medicine was something that mostly men studied, and the few women who actually studied it were really interested and dedicated to that, and then these women who did successfully study medicine then also went on to found their own surgeries and so on. So maybe that's what's going on. I don't really think that that there were lots of that sort of in absolute terms there were a lot of women funding their own surgeries 20 or 30 years ago. So
I would argue I don't know the numbers. Maybe it's true.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers either, but just sort of from my own experience. I've never been in East Frisia, but just from what I've observed here in Bavaria. So.
I see. Then in that case, what sparkled the significant increase of women in there? I mean, it's not like journalism where it was traditionally or a philology faculty where it's traditionally female-dominated anyway. It's dentistry. What sparkled such a significant increase in female desire to study there, and a significant decrease in the male desire to study there? I mean, if it's years with 100% female graduation, that signals a significant disinterest from men to want to go there to study.
Yeah, I'm not sure myself. I know that a lot of women study medicine in general. I'm not sure if I didn't really know that it's particularly skewed in dentistry. But then again, the numbers we get there is something like a third are still of the students are still male, so it's not completely female dominated. I don't really know exactly why women or so many women study dentistry now. In sort of terms of medicine in general, I think it's always basically a field that women found attractive, but in the past, women would usually become nurses or doctor's assistants and so on, but now of course more women want to become doctors themselves, so I guess that's why we see the high rates of enrollment for women in medicine in general. Yeah, so but why it's particularly why that's particularly the case in dentistry, I don't really know.
I see. Yeah, and you do have a point how to address this under the current paradigm. I don't think a male quota would help, because you'd have to increase the interest into the particular topic, or you'll get less qualified men, just like it happens when women are forced into, I don't know, IT or mathematics or whatnot. The same phenomenon would occur here. You would get less qualified male dentists who, yes, won't take maternal leave and whatnot, but also won't provide a very good service either, on average. Of course, there will be exceptions, but I would be shocked to see that the exceptions would be the norm.
Yeah, what this reminds me a bit is the case in Austria that we had a couple of months ago, where they have a different system for enrollment, where they actually have a test for applicants, and whether you're accepted just depends on your performance in that test. And in that test, men did quite a bit better, and that was seen as a huge problem. And they instituted women's quotas for that test, so that basically women were scored such that the percentage of women admitted was the same as the percentage of men admitted, based on the number of applicants. And it's sort of in general, it seems that women tend to do better in coursework, whereas men tend to do better in tests. So maybe a way this imbalance could be addressed is to have some sort of combination of a test and the Abitur score, where maybe you have something like 50% is your Abitur mark, and then you also have a test which also sort of provides you more relevant information, where you can actually ask students about stuff that's going to be relevant for their particular field of study, rather than just general information as in the Abitur. So that might be not just to address this particular problem, but just in general might be a good idea. And it's also something that's in a couple of fields is already done in Germany. Like, for example, in English, I think this is usually done where you have this sort of 50-50 thing with the tests and your grades. So this is not a completely unprecedented thing. And I think that not just because of this problem, but sort of in general, would be probably a good idea.
Yeah, you know how it used to be done here. It was instituted under communism, and it survived until mid-2000s. No matter what college or faculty you would have chosen, you would have an admission exam. It didn't matter, you could have had the worst grades possible during high school. If you did well on the test, or usually it was a conglomerate of tests, usually 2 or 3 different tests, then you would be admitted. And that many people today consider that it was a fairer system than now, when essentially those who do very, very well in ass-kissing teachers do better than those who could actually do better in the particular field. So yeah, that's why I tend to agree with you that a more emphasis on a test would probably address this better.
Yeah, there's also some evidence that in Germany, boys get worse grades for the same work than girls do from
classroom. Yeah, I think this is quite universal. I mean, every country that has had such a study yielded similar results. I kind of see a pattern here. Britain also had a similar study. Sweden had a similar study. France had a similar study. It's kind of getting a pattern in here.
Yeah, but still, at the end of the day, this sort of idea of a men's quota is just an incredibly crude solution to that, and you still want things to be fair. You want to admit the most qualified candidates, and not just the candidates that based on their genitalia you think are most likely to found their own surgery later on.
Yeah, it's a crude solution, and I'm not convinced at all it would work. I mean, I see it in the same terms as women's quotas, that is to say, bollocks. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, this one is from Ingolstadt Today. A pedophile turns out to be a child's father. Yesterday evening at about 9 p.m., a 50-year-old man from Ingolstadt took a walk in Freising together with his 10-year-old daughter. This seemed to three young men aged 18 to 23 to be fishy, the police say. So they pursued the two. During the pursuit, the man alerted a female resident to the situation who was out on her balcony, and the woman joined in the chase. A speaker for the Freising police recounts what happened next. The pursuers eventually confronted the 50-year-old man from Ingolstadt and called him a child abuser and a pedophile. Then the 40-year-old boyfriend of the resident joined the fray and hit the father in the face. After the police arrived at the scene, the 50-year-old's wife and the 10-year-old's mother came. She's on record saying that she had visited a course by the Chamber of Industry and Commerce and that her husband had wanted to go on a walk with her daughter in the meantime. The woman then took her beaten up husband to the Freising clinic for treatment. The police are investigating for battery and defamation.
Jesus fucking Christ. Seriously, that's all I can say. Jesus fucking Christ. This is where pedohysteria leads to. I mean, come on, Jesus Christ. Seriously, you're gonna start beating the crap out of people randomly on the street because you don't like their age? I mean, I don't know. I'll try to restrain myself. If I were on my channel, I would go far worse than this. And seriously, this is the result of... I don't remember Germany having a particular pedohysteria.
Yeah, it's unusual for Germany, really.
It's a bit unusual. I mean, I would have expected this in Sweden or in Britain, but in Germany it's a bit unusual. But maybe you can enlighten me. Did you have a recent pedohysteria episode in the area?
No, not really. This is why I thought it would be interesting to include this, that this is now apparently spreading to Germany.
Sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad, and the internet, and especially the clickbait media, isn't making it any better. I mean, with the over-publicizing of the things that creates the impression that there's a pedo behind every bush. And I don't know, maybe it triggered them that there was a bit unusual to see a 50-year-old father having a 10-year-old daughter. Maybe that's a bit unusual.
It's not really all that unusual. I mean, you know, it's somewhat of a big age difference, bigger than usual, but you know, in general, people in Germany tend to have children relatively late, so it's not too unusual, especially since it's a man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, in here it would have been presumed that it's the grandfather, and that's it. I mean, no. In here, people have children younger, although it's starting to slowly move towards a higher age. But in here, it would have just been presumed that it's the grandfather, and that's it. I mean, come on, beat the crap
Yeah, it could be your uncle or someone like. It's just, I mean, if I don't know, maybe the girl exhibited some sign of distress or something. Maybe she was arguing with her father or something like that, and these three men took that as evidence of I know the girl being abducted or something like that, but I don't know. I mean, the article sort of sparse on details, so we don't know exactly what happened, but you know, just going on the
call a random woman from the balcony and then her boyfriend and all four of you. I mean, why not just call the police or call the, I don't know, something? Aren't there something like public guardians or something like that on the streets?
Yeah, and even if you could somehow know that is in fact a pedophile, that's still no reason to hit him in the face. You know, then just call the police.
Yeah. Amazing. And it is sad. I hope this will be a singular case and not something that spreads even further. I mean, these kinds of cases are quite often occurring in Sweden and in Britain. And in Britain, it goes even further with regulations in some public places where you're not allowed with a younger child, and the hysteria is just massive. I hope this doesn't spread in Germany or anywhere else in Europe. I hope it stays contained into the asylum. I'm sorry to be that blunt, but I really do consider that the countries who take this kind of hysteria seriously, I really do think that's a bit of an asylum. Uh, to believe that there's an abuser behind every corner, no, that's asylum behavior.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one is a bit old, in fact, quite a lot of old, but I somehow missed it. I wanted to include it 2 times, and I missed it, and we also had a 3-week break, so it got lost somewhere. So yeah, but it comes from Népszava online from Hungary. And it says, Zoltán Balog, the Istanbul Convention is a misguided act. The women's organizations and the press learned that Minister Zoltán Balog presented a proposal for establishing a parliamentary resolution on promoting effective action against domestic violence as part of the renewed national development strategy. Not only the news itself came unexpectedly, but the proposal and the concept of the resolution did not really reflect the goals of the Istanbul Convention and raised several points of concern. That is to say, the minister is not treating domestic violence as a gendered issue. Leaked documents state that it is definitely a welcomed action in the establishment that the government should get involved on this issue. However, this does not mean it will turn out as the women's organizations want, because Zoltán Balog's proposal for the parliament essentially ignores the tenets of the Istanbul Convention. And I'll skip a bit and go to this portion. A statement from the women's organization reads something like this, quote, "We are aware and we support the idea that the government take the necessary steps to ratify the Istanbul Convention. At a first glance, it would seem that this decision obviously serves this goal, but that's not exactly true, or perhaps implementing the Istanbul Convention wasn't the goal in the first place. In our view, the proposal is not fully in line with the Convention. In fact, it runs contrary to the message of the Convention, as it does not appear to be concerned with the social equality of men and women, and it explicitly ignores that domestic violence is part of women's natural history, and that it arises from gender power disparities. Instead, the government's proposal starts from the idea that DV is a generational issue and introduces professional help with that approach in mind." And it goes on and on a bit more. But essentially, the Hungarian government seems to have embraced Erin Pici's view, and now the fembots are throwing a temper tantrum. And the article is from June, but it's still relevant because the parliament is not in session, so essentially no progress has been made since the publication of this piece. Come on, this is a fabulous news. Essentially,
Yeah.
the Hungarian government told the fembots, you and your Istanbul Convention can go the fuck out. We know better.
Yeah, how dare these unenlightened Hungarians? How dare they attempt to actually tackle domestic violence based on evidence and not, feminist dogma and theories that have been disproven again and again over decades.
Yep. And I've looked around throughout the Hungarian blogosphere, and essentially, except for 1 or 2 guys that I personally know from Hungary, all the articles are essentially against the idea, what the government is doing, and it's horrible and whatnot. And to be fair, the Viktor Orban administration hasn't been quite fabulous. But on this particular issue, it's probably one of the few issues where they're not wrong. Like, at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, Mr. Zoltán Balog, piss off the feminist entirely, and yeah, I mean, if there is to be a government intervention on the issue, it should at the very least start from, reality. And after good news, it comes a huge gem of stupidity, obviously from Sweden, from Expressen. Enough with the hatred and derision in Sweden, and emotional tribe intensifies. Goes like this. Hating a woman, mocking a woman, and deriding a woman is so easy. It's all so fast. It feels so good, I guess. Why else do we have so many men there in the system? Come on, Sweden, let's show that we can do better. That's exactly as it sounds on Twitter if you do it in the dangerous Sweden of today. I propose that this country's Twitterers tip our best women's accounts. And yes, she means it. I suggest that we should share some of our best women's accounts under the hashtag Fiolen Kvinna, follow a woman after I saw the new annual survey which presented the new statistics on Twitter. 9 out of the 10 largest accounts in Sweden are run by a man, and 8 out of 10 most influential accounts are run by a man. Isn't it odd that we in social media would rather follow a man than a woman? We prefer to retweet a man than a woman. Are men really so much funnier or smarter? In ordinary life, I meet both brilliant men and women. Perhaps it has just been a coincidence for too many to let the male perspective set the agenda in one's social media feed. Does it matter? Yes. Is it possible to change? Yes, and it's very simple. The hashtag has been trending, and so far Malena Erman, Jonas Gardel, Sören Ismail, Helle Klein, and many, many more shared thousands of smart, knowledgeable, wise, and funny female accounts. Some loved the hashtag, others hated it, wondering if I really wanted someone to follow me just because of my sex. Thus, hashtag Fölle en kvinna was reduced. A known male commentator wondered if we really needed the helping wheels. No, it was not a coincidence that he used the word helping wheels, which are the wheels children need to learn to ride a bike. That was the point, he explained. Yeah, right. It was just hatred and derision. Let it be as it is, as it has always been. Do not touch our male dominance. But for the rest of us, we see something positive to, one, sharing good contacts and knowledge, one of the major benefits of social media, and two, disseminate more female votes to a greater diversity, a richer democracy when the figures show male dominance. Stupidity intensifies. A few words about the hatred and scorn. Stand up against it. Why should Twitter be an official hate and scorn basement club where many mock in a way they'd never dare to do face-to-face? Ideally, the hate and the mock of women shouldn't exist. Ideally, women will be taking the place and violate the norms, as did the crime writer Camilla Läckberg, TV host Alexandra Pascalidou, and artist Zara Larsson, who incidentally violated the norm by topping the list of most influential Twitterers. I'm so tired of the hatred and scorn to stand unchallenged. When you see a person scorn or hate, arise, Sweden. Say it like it is. The questioning should be nice, honest, and civilized. Just ask the question, why do you say so? Why do you use such deriding words? If we stand silent and look on, we become the mob that gives the silent approval, like bullies in a school class. Those who know listen, watch, and either enjoy or are too cowardly to speak up. It's enough silence. It is enough hate and scorn in Sweden. It's possible to change. It's going to take responsibility for a friendlier and warmer country. And it starts with you and me. I can't believe that such garbage is... Jesus fuck. And I really checked and double-checked and triple-checked to see if this is satire, and it's not. I mean, I could really expect this to be satire. As I was reading it, I was waiting for the punchline, and the punchline never came. Amazing. Do people really think that it's an act of oppression because someone pokes fun at you on Twitter? I mean, if someone asks you why do you need the helping wheels, the support wheels, that's scorn and hatred? Really?
Yeah, probably.
Mind you, Expressen is the second largest read newspaper in Sweden, so it's not like this is some sort of Lady Dama or some obscure feminist blog. No. This is on the front page. Jesus Christ. Amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, Lucian, you need to realize that Twitter is serious business. I mean, there have been known cases of women actually getting PTSD from Twitter, so this is not something to underestimate.
Yeah, I also got PTSD coming from post-Tumblr stress disorder. Every time I visit something on Tumblr, I get a post-Tumblr stress disorder. Now, in all seriousness, what the fuck is wrong with these people? And I've looked through the hashtag, and it was something like 10% of the tweets were deriding and mocking, and I added a bit more to the kitty because I had to. But most of the comments were actually serious. I mean, what the hell is wrong in the Swedish internet corner? Do people don't see how stupid this idea is? And not just stupid, but utterly irrelevant. I mean, this is the...
Why does it matter what percentage of people that people are following? I mean, it's just utterly irrelevant, and
Yeah.
it's not like there's some sort of secret patriarchy club that just exclusively promotes male Twitter users or anything like that. It's just apparently there are more people on Twitter or more men on Twitter who are interesting than women on Twitter. I mean, okay, why not? Why does it matter? Why should you expect it to be 50-50?
Yeah, and again, even if it were 100-0, why is it relevant? And more importantly, why is it relevant on a national circulated newspaper to put on the front fucking page? Because I could see why this. I mean, you would gather 3 or 4 friends. Okay, let's give ladies. Okay, let's go, ladies, on Twitter and tweet our stuff, and maybe we'll get some followers, and compete on the free market of ideas and whatnot. That would be fine, and definitely wouldn't have come up on my radar. But to put it on the front page of a national newspaper as a big issue, I mean, really?
It's just really frivolous, but that's true of so much of feminism these days.
Yeah, and I said something before the show, and I should put this on the air too. We have to at least appreciate the positivity in there. I mean, they encourage you to follow more females, as opposed to Jessica Valenti and other Anglo fembots who encourage you to unfollow men. So I guess there is some, I don't know, a tiny percent of a point of positivity, bonus points for the Swedish fembots. Nah, no. They're still idiots. Okay, let's go to the next one. Next one is from you.
Oh, okay, yeah. This is from the Metro from the UK. Barmen stopped wearing kilts because women kept grabbing their penises. Barmen in a popular Scottish-themed venue have had to abandon their kilts due to women lifting them up and even grabbing the penis. Staff at Hootenanny in Inverness said the problem was particularly bad at weekends, when large groups of drunk women would circle around. It told the Inverness Courier that the attacks were pure sexism. Fraser said, "It may seem funny, but it is serious too. The women are sticking their hands up their kilts. Can you imagine if I went into a restaurant and struck my hand up a girl's skirt? I would be taken to the police station, and rightly so. I look after my customers, but equally important are my staff. I am not forcing them to do something they don't want to do. We fellows are very aware of sexism. I think the women need to catch up."
Teach women not to grope? Anyone?
Yeah, apparently.
I mean, I'm sorry for deriding it, but seriously, someone in the area should put up some posters like this. Teach women not to grope, because I really do think that in some cases it's essential to turn the tables against our philosophical opponents. Let me be polite this time, because I like how the staff approached it. I mean, they complained, and then they took some measures to counteract it, as opposed to filling the entire press with what a serious issue it is. I really liked how they treated it. And complain civilized, and then take measures to counteract it, and that's it. And this is how men usually work.
Yeah, and there's this perception that men always welcome sexual attention from women, and they're always horny and so on, and so it's no big deal to grope them, and it really is a problem, and it's something that does need to be addressed, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean,
it's really something that that according to its self-description, feminists should do something about, but of course they're not really. I mean,
Yeah.
when asked about it, they're going to say, this is a problem and this is your harmful gender roles and so on, and but they're not actually doing anything about it.
Yeah, and again, even if all the stereotypes and perceptions were true, it doesn't mean that because I'm always horny, it means I'm horny about you in particular, or
Yeah.
the entire planet in particular. I mean, the two aren't necessarily mutually inclusive. I can be always horny and not want to deal with uh, drunk drunk women in a Scottish pub.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know what they could do further than that. I guess they could call the police. I would harass the police if I were them, uh, even if it didn't bother me that much. Precisely just to make a point, I would do it if I were them. I would call the police every single time on every single issue and file a report.
Yeah, maybe that might be the best strategy.
Yeah, it is perfectly legal. It's actually encouraged, and it would definitely make a broader point than filling the mass media with stories, as it happens when it's the other way around, when a few waitresses are harassed in this matter. Okay, okay. Now let's move on to trigger warnings. And for trigger warnings, I'm going to read the 70% of a very long article published in the Swedish press. I chose this article for the simple reason that it's very well documented. And I know I usually deride the Swedish press and Dagens Nyheter in particular, but this article is really, really good. I mean, it comes off as neutral. Very little editorializing, and both sides of the argument are presented, and I really liked it. And in my opinion, it provides a very good starting point for us to kick around with the discussion about trigger warnings. And because trigger warnings is becoming an increasingly relevant topic, not just in Sweden but also in Britain, in France, recently in Italy, in some universities. So it's becoming a trendy topic, to my utter disillusion. But anyway, so yeah, let's start going through it. I will apologize if I'll stutter, but instant translation from Swedish. Yeah, anyway, so trigger warning, but for what? It used to be a way to shelter people with traumatic experiences. Now it is considered a sign of political correctness. Trigger warning is one of the year's major topics. But what are the warnings about? Maybe it was just a matter of time before trigger warnings or trigger alerts would be used as a political ball. 23 minutes into his Almedalen speech, Ebba Busch Thor, leader of Christian Democrats, presented his theory around the concept. Now, Almedalen is a political event taking place every year in July in Sweden, where essentially all political leaders gather on an island and speak about their political parties and political views and whatnot. So anyway, quote, when the warning flags for the plant's contents are put into literature, art, and university reading lists, that's when we see the consequences of relentless identity politics, said Busch Thor. The search for a safe place means that people form closed group identities, he added. Trigger warnings are meant to warn people before they take part in activities such as reading books, watching films, or engage in internet forums where the content may be offensive. One common approach is a fetid line of text that describes the possible triggering content. Opinions on trigger alerts are divided. When students at Uppsala University argued for trigger warnings on university literature, the critics, particularly the liberal ones, fiercely attacked back. Trigger warnings, they think, suggest, quote, the rising of a new moralist and Puritan current and excessive political correctness. But is it that simple? What do they actually criticize? The concept of trigger warning was in its infancy tied to care for mental health issues, but then expanded as a strategy to moderate the feminist internet forums. The reader might be using the warning to avoid discussion threads where the objectionable material is being published. The goal was to assist internet navigation for people with experience of sexual abuse. This type of warnings recalled and established the consumer information for foul language to music albums, violence in films, or depictions of potentially horrifying images on news television. Culture in itself has the potential to trigger traumatic memories, says Luis Ramos-Rogerio. Well, that definitely sounds Swedish. A specialist in clinical psychology and director of the Crisis and Trauma Center in Stockholm. He often meets patients whose memories are brought to life by something they have seen, read, or listened to. Yes, that is how many patients of mine react at any time. They have double feelings because they want to see the content, but the trigger evokes the memory and they are forced to relive the trauma, says Ramos-Rogerio. There may be a need for this type of warning, says Luis Ramos-Rogerio. Graphic depictions can be very intrusive. At the same time, it is impossible to protect completely, he says, when a trigger can be anything. Screams in a classroom, the merchandise you may see when you shop at the store, or a track in the snow. There will be an incredibly difficult situation for these people. Many people choose to isolate themselves, but in the long term, the treatment is to be gradually exposed to the triggering situations or images, adds Luis Ramos-Rogerio. I'll skip a bit. At present, however, trigger warnings are not limited to consumption and on easily navigable internet. Internet users in recent years have argued that trigger alerts should be applied to a wide range of topics and people. In recent years, the idea has reached the academic world. Among other things, they have been considered by the students at the Columbia University in New York, where they argued that trigger warnings should be applied to an outdated and Eurocentric literature because it was allegedly polarized and it prioritized certain overtones of sexism and racism that were uncritically being taught. It is here, when trigger warnings meets the academia, when the understanding of the concept gets complicated. Many have completely different inputs into what the idea really is about. Is trigger warning a therapeutic protection? Is it a strategy to contain the political right? Or does it signal the phenomenon of a desire to create a safe space? Paulina de los Reyes, a professor of economic history at Stockholm University, this one sounds Swedish too, says it is important and not a pathologizing phenomenon. Such an argument questions the individual's weaknesses and not the society's structural problems, says Paulina de los Reyes. She has in the spring argued for the students' right to criticize sexism, racism, transphobia, and homophobia in education, and is critical to the guilt of the students who refuse to subordinate to an established knowledge ideals. A critical glance at the literature list is not about avoiding or censoring the lyrics or the content. It is about understanding how texts will be read, says Paulina de los Reyes. I don't think my students will have to read misogynistic books as if they were fiction books. Students have every right to critically examine and respond to texts that they read and performances that are being passed on to them. Irene Molina, professor of geography and vice chairman at the Council for Equal Rights at the Uppsala University, believes that the debate on trigger warnings has taken the wrong direction. The discussion brought about student literature is included in long-term efforts for equality, equity, and norm-critical pedagogy at Swedish universities, says Molina. Swedes have an obsession with that norm-critical thing. Anyway, I have worked with diversity issues since the beginning of the 1990s, and I have never seen a trigger warning. It is clear that we are creating a moral panic when work is described as a threat to democracy. She says, skipping some more, Jenny Westerstrand is a researcher at the Center for Gender Studies and a PhD candidate in law at the Uppsala University. She sees no problem with putting the university literature into context, but believes that the search for safe rooms is problematic. According to Westerstrand, this is a clear sign of a prevailing social trend where more and more people are pushing an agenda that individuals should not be violated by political views. Such an ambition that no one should experience the learning process as unpleasant are containing both an authoritarian and a demanding view of what knowledge means, she says. Of course, we will strive to make visible to make injustice visible and understand it. But this should be done by discussing and challenging. If you put that kind of tool in the hands of universities, then it risks becoming a cleaning brush against controversial views, adds Jenny Westerstrand. Historian Helen Lööw at Uppsala University understands the desire to avoid having to confront certain facts in the historic teaching, in the historical and in the historic teaching of literature. But she warns that removing the objection of the pieces of objectionable literature is counter to our understanding of our history. If we pick out the alleged defamatory literature from teaching, then those picks, of course, will also be cleared. Will also distort our image for regarding the struggle for rights and how it gradually changed, says Helen Lööw. Rather than opening the debate corridor, thinks Helen Lööw, to trigger alerts and similar strategies, we should probably discontinue the discussion on articles, literature, and source material before they began. Here, among widely different angles of what the phenomenon actually means, the debate on the trigger alerts has come to our land. It previously was about the individual's mental protection, and it has now become a debate on new moralistic and Puritan currents and possible strategies for developing gender equality. I would not necessarily say that trigger warning is a result of a dogmatic identity politics worldview, but it is a complex and interesting phenomenon. That is easy to, regarding which the debate gets easily locked into polarizing view, adds Helene Lööw. Violent depictions, such as movies and horrifying images in a news report, may have a potential to bring traumatic memories, added at the end Luis Ramos Ruggiero from the Crisis and Trauma Center. Okay, I really think that the analysis is as objective as it can be when we're still reading from Dagens Nyheter. I mean, I don't have too many things to object to it, except maybe that they didn't explore too much on the concept of using trigger warnings to consign the political right. I would have wanted to see a bit more exploration on that one. But otherwise, do you disagree with anything from this article, Jon?
Yeah, I think it's overall quite a balanced and good discussion. One thing that sort of struck me is this idea of using trigger warnings to make sure that people don't have to read things they disagree with, or written from people with different politics or something like that. I just can't help but think that this will be applied, or that if this is implemented, it will be applied in a very lopsided fashion. What would happen is that...
how it will be in Sweden, but in some British and American universities, this is already in place. Texts that question the merits of legalized abortion, for instance, have trigger warnings, and essentially anything that doesn't fall perfectly in line with the 2015 progressivist worldview. And I insist on the 2015 part because now even the Vagina Monologues has a trigger warning because it's transphobic. Because seriously, I mean, 1991 or whenever that piece of garbage was written, it's not progressive enough for 2015, so it needs a trigger warning. This is already happening in Britain and in some American universities. Definitely not in all, but it's already trending.
Yeah, and the revolution eats its children, and when you have a perpetual revolution that keeps happening every 20 or 30 years.
Taxing yourself into prosperity. Anyway, I had to put that in there.
Yeah, it's what would happen if I'm a student there and they say that I'm deeply offended by, say, socialism or feminism, and I'm studying, say, literature or something where like half or more of literary critics are both feminists and Marxists. So should I just
be like 90%? But anyway, go ahead.
Should I then just say, I'm just not going to study, most of the curriculum because it's all incredibly triggering to me to
No, because you're
read.
not norm critical and you're not a special snowflake. You're a white straight male. Fuck off.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
next question. Come on, I can play progressive for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm exaggerating. I can play progressive for 30 seconds, maybe a minute.
At least not without breaking into laughter.
Yeah, yeah, that's the main
Just
problem.
it only managed for 5 seconds, so you just have to work on that.
Yeah, in writing I can play progressive for hours and hours because I can laugh and no one will notice. But in speech I can't play progressive too much.
Yeah, basically this will be a tool to make the academic environment even more homogeneous in terms of allowable opinions, and will be even more strongly focused on the kind of progressive thoughts and the sort of fashionable leftist ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas anyone who wants to bring some actual diversity in there by having some different views will be shut out.
Gene said something in the chat room that got me thinking. I never think. I know it sounds incredibly banal and simple, but I never thought in this term. University students will love it because it means they do less coursework. I never thought it in these terms, but it's true. If essentially if you already know what the narrative is, you'll have to work less, and that may explain actually why many students don't revolt in, I don't know, British universities where they essentially now thought police everyone, in at least in some of them. Maybe that's a case. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's easier if you don't have to actually think and actually form critical perspectives, but when you can just apply critical theory where it just says that everything is shit because of capitalism or something like that, that's a lot easier.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the Swedes are so obsessed with what they call norm kritisk, the norm criticizing pedagogy or whatever. They're so obsessed with that, but they're also the same pedagogues are the ones who want to stamp out any sort of norm criticism.
Yeah, they basically want to erect their own norms, and these are not to be questioned.
Double speak is over 9,000 in there. I mean, let's be all norm critical, but don't you dare criticize progressive thought. Wait, how is that supposed to work? And unlike the author of this article who tries to be moderate, I'm not going to try to be moderate. I am deeply worried that the idea of trigger warning escaped from Tumblr, essentially escaped from the asylum. I mean, it was funny when it was only on Tumblr. It's no longer funny if it's in universities. I really think it's a danger overall.
Yeah, I mean, particularly university is a place you go to get your ideas challenged. You have to engage with views different than your own, and only in this way can you actually grow and sort of develop intellectually. If you just sit in an echo chamber and just hear the same people repeating the same opinions, you're just going to be intellectually stunted.
Yeah, and also, even on the internet, I think it's outrageous. I mean, I purposefully go on communist websites and on feminist websites, and I read them. I don't read them religiously, but I make a point 1 or 2 hours a week to read something diametrically opposed to me, because first of all, I want to know what's the latest insanity, but second of all, I want to know the position of the philosophical opponent as best as I can, even to the point that I could argue for it, indistinguishable from an actual supporter of it, because that's when you actually know that, that's when you actually develop a thoughtful position of your own, even if it's not in opposition to what you hear.
Yeah,
and universities were supposed to train this skill.
Yeah, Brian Kaplan termed this the ideological Turing test. The idea that you can only properly criticize an idea or an ideology if you're capable of expressing arguments for that ideology good enough that actual proponents of that cannot tell the difference between you and an actual proponent.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think this is very important, because if you don't know what the actual people on the other side are arguing, or what the actual position is, then you're just going to attack a bunch of straw men, and you're not really furthering any sort of discussion. You're just screaming at people and calling them names.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, universities were supposed to train this skill at best as possible. I see now that in some universities, I mean, it started long before that. I mean, let's face it, in some universities, you're not allowed to study anything from the fascist point of view, because, well, it's fascist. You're just supposed to know that fascism is bad. But the interesting part is that many don't know why fascism is bad. Because yes, it's bad, but why? And same happened in the past, where you were not supposed to study, I don't know, back in the days when the Catholic Church used to control knowledge, you were not supposed to study perspectives that ran severely against the Catholic perspective. You were just supposed to know that they're bad. Well, yeah, but why?
May I interject something here?
Please do.
Yeah, I find the whole idea of not being allowed to study fascism fascist in and of itself.
It is. It is. It is, and think about it like this: if you read Mein Kampf in Slovakia, you can go to jail. Meanwhile, there are students who need to quote from Mein Kampf in their graduation thesis. It's very interesting. How do they balance both of them? And the same goes in Austria and in Germany.
No. It's not banned in Germany or in Austria. It's just no. It's not banned. It's perfectly legal. That's the thing, is that
you're not allowed to print more copies.
The state of Bavaria claims the copyright on Mein Kampf, and it's just basically sitting on it and not printing any new copies. However, the copyright lasts in Germany for 70 years after the author's death. And since Hitler died in 1945, the copyright actually expires this year. So after that, new copies can be printed, and that's perfectly legal then.
Yeah, because it will be common domain.
But
you're probably right. I must have misread but in Slovakia I know for sure, because I know in Austria it's not about Mein Kampf, it's about questioning Holocaust. I mean, there was an author
you're not allowed to do that,
who was sent to jail for what he might say at a conference because he was a known Holocaust revisionist. Now, I believe the idea of Holocaust denying to be utterly insane, but to jail people for what they might say at a conference, I'll go with James on this one. I find that fascist in and of itself.
Yeah, it's the same in Germany. If you deny or question the Holocaust, that's a punishable offense. You can go to jail for that. And there are people currently in jail for that. It's not something that's never applied.
Yeah.
It is actually a law that is enforced.
Yeah, on my channel where I pissed off a lot of Bernie supporters, they called me a fascist. But, none of them seem to want to be looking at the fascist manifesto, which proposed pretty much anything that the progressives want now. A minimum wage, universal suffrage, lowering the voting age. All of these are fascist policies. Benito Mussolini was for all of these.
And a lot of things that the progressive support, of course, was, or a lot of the progressive policies were actually inspired by fascism. Like, for example,
eugenics.
I think that was around before fascism. But for example, in the US, FDR's
after 1920s, and the fascist manifesto started in 1919. Oh, but anyway, I won't argue. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, for example, in the US, FDR's New Deal was
absolutely
in quite a significant degree inspired by fascism.
Yes.
back then, fascism, as in the Italian fascism, was quite fashionable among intellectuals, and I thought this was this great idea, this great this compromise between capitalism and socialism, and we have this strong state who is capable of ensuring the common good and so on. This was a really fashionable idea.
Yes. And guess what? Now you can't say some of these things in some universities. I mean, saying that the FDR's policies were inspired by fascism, that needs 1,000 trigger warnings, and you might still be sanctioned for creating a hostile learning environment. And I wish I were joking. I mean, we've read in a British university they sanctioned a few students and banned their reading group because they read Nietzsche and some other author. You do remember we read that story.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm thinking, I mean, what the hell is going on? Because this kind of thing, now we're laughing because it's still in its infancy, and yeah, the students can still go read Nietzsche somewhere else, and they don't really need the university's approval for that. They can just form their own group and read in a pub and whatnot. But these kinds of things will have a lasting effect, even if they stop tomorrow, because it will essentially breed a new generation who has been raised in an echo chamber.
Yeah, and this thing is steadily progressing, as the name progressive implies. It's
like a disease, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, so from my own experience in Germany, it's not as bad yet as in the Anglophone countries. But it's definitely on the march. This whole idea that if you don't conform to the sort of general progressive worldview, then you're someone to be shunned, and that's not ideas that are discussed in polite society and so on.
Yeah, the specter of debate has been limited severely. The spectrum of debate, sorry, has been limited severely, and I don't know. And something to be said as a counter-argument. Yeah, the trigger warning, I can understand them in mental health, as this article commences. I can totally understand in therapy, where you're treating people with PTSD and whatnot, to provide certain warnings like these in a controlled environment and whatnot, as a therapeutic, and as that Spanish guy who says he's Swedish, and I'll trust him. But anyway, he says that essentially the therapy is a gradual exposing to the trigger event or whatnot, the trigger sound. I can understand that. I can fully understand that, and I support it because it reasonably makes sense. But to expand what is essentially a mental health tool to the entire society, starting with the universities and then on the internet and progressively towards the entire society, I don't think that's reasonable. And I don't buy this analogy. Well, but we have on records where it says parental advisory, obscene content and whatnot. I don't buy that analogy. And in fact, that thing was also introduced by the Puritanists, essentially. Because in Sweden, for instance, in the 70s, porn cassettes would be available even for a 10-year-old, and then the Puritanists came by and started enforcing stricter and stricter laws, including those trigger warnings on them. So I don't buy that analogy. I think it's a flawed analogy.
Yeah, though I have to say that in sort of a limited sense, I think the concept of trigger warnings makes sense, not just in terms of mental health patients. I think if you have a film or a book or an article or whatever, I think it might make sense to include some sort of content warning if you have graphic depictions of rape or extreme violence or things like that. I think it makes sense to have some sort of warning on there. I don't think it should be obligatory, but I think it would be a nice thing to do. I don't have any problem with that. But sort of extending that to the university context just doesn't really make sense to me, because a university is not meant to be a safe space. You're not. If you, I don't know, study criminal law or something, and yes, you do have to deal with rape cases, for example. It's just
Yeah,
it's
or
just
mass
part of
murder.
the study. And if you can't handle that, then you just have to study a different subject. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know
especially if
you.
you're planning to become a prosecutor. What will you do if you've been cocooned from reality your entire university years, and then once you end up a prosecutor, the police will call you and they said, "Come quick in Uppsala because we have 4 dead bodies in here, and the investigation is about to start." And you know the prosecutor is usually amongst the first people to be called on the crime scene. At least it's in Sweden, and then in here, and in France, and in most of the civil law nations, the prosecutor is usually called quite at the incipient phase of a murder case. What will you do then? Because you haven't seen any pictures, you haven't dealt with genuine horrific images and whatnot. How will you cope with it? And it would create a generation of, I have to say, of wimps, essentially.
Yeah, so we have to preface every call with, trigger warning, crime, death, dead bodies, extreme violence, etc.
Hashtag extreme violence. Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah, I don't know. This is why I think it's dangerous, because, well, if it, and again, even in universities, if it were contained to the insane asylums, such as the gender studies department, I wouldn't care that much, because that department in and of itself shouldn't exist. But if it exists, okay, let it be the asylum in there, and the rest of us can be sane and normal people. But to extend it to literature and whatnot, a trigger warning because it presents a Eurocentric view. Well, it was written in Europe in the 16th century. Of course it has a Eurocentric view. I mean, come on, seriously? A trigger warning for that? Can't be fucking kidding me. And again, even in literature it would be tolerable, but as you said, criminal law, or I don't know, some studies of medicine, for instance, the anatomic pathological, the coroner's office, essentially. What will you do then? You have to actually touch dead bodies before graduating. What you're going to do then? You're going to have trigger warnings. Oh, trigger warnings, you're going to see guts spread everywhere. It sounds funny, but this is likely to happen if this thing progresses unfettered.
Or even in, say, biology, for example, rape is something that occurs in nature in many species, and
Absolutely, yes.
it is sort of a more or less a standard evolutionary strategy, and it is something that you have to deal with if you're a biologist.
Absolutely, yes. And to be fair, this may be just another step of ruining the grit of the next generation, because let's face it, more and more countries, including some in Eastern Europe, but most of them in Western Europe and North America, more and more jurisdictions have come to a point where they regulate the children growing up. That they don't essentially grow up anymore the way it used to be just a decade ago, or in some cases even 5 years ago. I mean, I'm actually thinking to make a video about this. My childhood would be almost entirely illegal now in some jurisdiction. I mean it. I mean, think about it like this: I would go unsupervised for the entire day, several kilometers away from home. Because I would spend the vacations in the countryside, and my great grandmother was 95, couldn't supervise me entirely when I was 10. I mean, come on, she had no chance whatsoever. So I would go unsupervised, many kilometers away, even crossing the Danube, and literally crossing the Danube. But it wasn't a border portion, so it was no chance of being shot by border patrol of the Soviet Union. But anyway, crossing the Danube and climbing up trees and eating unwashed cherries and unwashed other fruits, and all of these are illegal now. Parents or supervisors could be sanctioned for allowing such thing. And in America, they even have a term for that. It's called free-range parenting. We used to call that parenting and normal childhood. And the grid of the next generation is already slowly being destroyed, and now they're cocooning them more and more, even in universities. And I'm genuinely concerned about this trend, that I don't think it will end up well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is something to be said, for protecting children and so on. Maybe some of the parenting practices that used to be practiced, 50 years ago, even just 20 years ago, were a bit dangerous and so on, and maybe some of them shouldn't really be practiced, but you sort of have to find a balance here, and trying to protect the children from every possible danger is just not really feasible, and it just means that your children won't be able to grow up properly, because you do need to learn how to weigh risks, and how to face difficult situations, and how to deal with emotional difficulties and so on. That's just something you have to deal with, and you have to learn in your childhood. And
yes, and I fundamentally believe in allowing the child to sometimes fail and sometimes suffer consequences, such as, I don't know, a small injury because he ran too fast or whatnot. These are the things that teach you how to do things in order to no longer fail next time. But how is this happening now when they play soccer without keeping the score because some kids will be offended? They're running on the field, and then everyone gets a trophy because the slowest, fattest, whiniest kid would be offended otherwise and would cry for his mommy, and we don't want to do that. And when we can't have that. I mean, these kinds of things are toxic today, and they're happening more and more. I was shocked recently when I saw a picture from a park in Bucharest, which it had something like 2,000 words in rules in the entrance of the children's park. That same park was completely unregulated 5 years ago. Children would go there, use those devices there. Yes, some of them would get minor injuries, and then but they would cry for their parents, and the parents would come and fix them, and then go move on with the life. And then next time they won't get injured because they know how to use the device now. 5 years ago, now it has 2,000 words of rules, 2 policemen to supervise it, and to teach essentially to teach the parents how to parent legally. That's insane. And this is in Bucharest. In the US, I've read some cases that was, oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, seriously, I genuinely believe that my entire childhood would be illegal in some US jurisdictions. And think about it like this. I had my first job at the age of 12.
Yeah, that's child labor. That's
that's child labor now. Because apparently selling newspaper on the streets is abusive or something.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
I loved that job, not only because it produced decent amount of money, but also it learned me how to wake up properly in time early in the morning, and how to dose my time in such a manner that I won't get tired whilst walking, and get up to all of the subscribers in time and whatnot. That job taught me a lot of things that stuck with me for the rest of the life. It was a fabulous experience, something that I would wish most kids would have. But now it's illegal.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think a lot of children could just learn more from just having a job than going to school, especially children who are not really doing that well in school, and basically just wasting their time there. But of course, it's illegal for children to work under a certain age, and it's.
Yes, and put it another way, here in Europe, and increasingly in the US too, but mostly here in Europe, universities kind of exist to mask unemployment. I mean, most of the kids in there will not be considered unemployed because most of the youngsters, won't be considered unemployed because they're allegedly students, and some of them are students in bullshit topics. But the taxpayer pays, so essentially they show up in statistics as students, and this is happening all over Europe. Admittedly, in some parts of Europe, such as Britain, to a lesser extent, but in other parts of Europe, such as Greece or Italy, in a very high extent. So yeah, they also exist to mask unemployment, and they actually kidnap the opportunity of the youngsters in his or her most creative years to actually do something that would be not only productive for society, but productive for him or herself. Because wasting the most productive, I like the German model on this one. You know, the German model actually encourages those who don't do well in theoretical subjects to go to, you know, a trade school and whatnot. That's a significantly superior model because, you know, those who can't really be good mathematicians and whatnot, they may still be good tradesmen on some certain particular blue-collar career. And that's definitely a better model than what most of Europe has, which essentially encourages everyone to graduate from university. And in university, they get cocooned after they have been cocooned most of their lives, and then they face reality, and then they fail.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it depends a lot on what sort of subjects you're studying in university. There's you know, a lot of university degrees that are perfectly sound investments of your time, where you learn valuable skills and or at least get a valuable degree that allows you to do valuable jobs, and that's perfectly fine. But that's a lot of just bullshit degrees where people are just you know, hanging out for a couple of years and making friends and going to parties and so on, and
yeah, which
no
could be done
one
without in a private club or something like that. It would cost less. It would waste less time. I mean, joining a private club and paying a fee of, I don't know, 100 euros per year, let's say, would yield similar results without wasting time in courses and without wasting taxpayers' money. It would yield identical results.
Yeah, indeed. But I think we've drifted really far from the topic, actually.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. But the reason we did is because I wanted to bring this broader point in it. Put in this context, this idea of progressing trigger warnings everywhere in universities is just essentially another step to. I don't know if it's intentional, deliberate or not. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it is another step to essentially struck down grit from the next generation.
Yeah, and it's just the thing is that you do learn by overcoming difficulties and facing things that you can't really deal with easily. If you're just you're doing things that come easily and that where you don't have to expend a lot of effort, you don't really learn anything. You don't develop further as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And
if you can't fail, then where's the incentive?
Yeah, and sort of being exposed to ideas you disagree with or ideas that offend you definitely goes a way of, you know, shaping character and just sort of making you, I guess, more complete as a person. Someone who is you know, able to read something he disagrees with and still sort of pass judgment more or less objectively and to analyze it in a dispassionate way instead of just getting offended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is essentially a self-control issue. I mean, yeah, if you get fundamentally offended for the first time at the age of 18, you'll probably throw a temper tantrum. But if you get offended second time and third time, by the time you get offended fundamentally by the 10th time, you'll learn no longer to throw a temper tantrum. And that's good because some of these youngsters end up at the age of 30 or 28 or something like that. They have never been offended, never been subjected to a contrary point of view, and then they find out an asshole like me. And you can see how they react as I used to react when I was 13, but I had an excuse, you know, I was fucking 13. So and that's the thing. It prolongs. I hate to sound like a grumpy old man, but essentially it does prolong adolescence. And the more trigger warnings in universities progresses, the more it will essentially transform university as an extension of adolescence. And I don't know if that's a good thing. I really don't think it is, but anyway, I don't know objectively if it's a good thing. Maybe it is. Maybe some psychologists could prove me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you know, adolescence is important, but I don't know if you need to extend it
26.
further and further. And there's it's just I think it's really problematic that a lot of universities are treating their students not as adults but as adolescents who
Yes.
need to be coddled and who
Yes.
need to be babysat and so on. Whereas universities should just be institutes for adult education, for where you're not someone who needs to be looked after and so on, but you're just an adult going to this place to learn, and where you have responsibility for yourself, um, and you're responsible to yourself for showing up in time and doing the work and so on.
Mhm.
And I think that's being lost in a great measure.
Yeah, and especially being lost in the Anglo universities because they have this thing of mandatory 1 year in the cocooned campus and things of that nature, which, yeah, as you said, essentially treats them as kids, uh, regulating every aspect of their lives and whatnot, as opposed to. This is one of the good things of most of Europe, because in most of Europe, that's not really the case by practicality. Universities in Europe don't have these cocooned campuses, and hopefully will never have them. And whether you like it or not, you have to. I hate to say it, you have to man up essentially, because the propensity towards taking care of students is lower because it's a practical impossibility.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of universities in Europe, it's just you're thrown in there. You just have to figure out what courses you have to sign up for and so on. There's maybe some sort of introductory lecture where they tell you, here's the things that are recommended for you in the first semester and so on. But after that, you just have to figure out yourself. You have to, go to the website or go to someone's office to ask, what.
Yeah, and you also
what are the
learn to
recommended
navigate a
courses and so on.
bureaucracy.
Yeah, you learn to navigate this bureaucracy, and you learn how to deal with people and how to get your information, and you're just responsible for yourself figuring out what courses do I need to take in what semester, and so on, and you need to and there's no one there who takes you by the hand if you're struggling and if you're falling behind, and tells you um, how to make up for the things you've missed or something like that. No, it's just you're responsible for that. You have to figure out yourself how to get the information you need, and what to do if you've fallen behind and so on.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
And
regard
there's
that as
no one, and there's no one cares if you're failing. There's no one who says that, oh, I'm concerned that your grades are slipping or something like that. No, it's your own responsibility, because
Yes.
you're just one student among thousands and no one cares about you.
Yep, yep, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
Nope.
I think it's a very useful life experience. Sorry, and yeah, trigger warnings might fuck that up, and hopefully it won't expand too much. Well, I guess we pretty much exhausted the topic. Expect people to extend the discussion in the comment section. Probably tell us we're all crazy, or maybe bring more ideas. Maybe
Maybe we should have provided a trigger warning at the start of this episode.
well, the episode is called "On Trigger Warnings," so that should be enough. I mean, come on, we're heartless bastards. We can't-
However, I've a couple of weeks ago I've read an article that trigger warnings themselves are actually triggering. So the word trigger actually triggers some people.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
so
I
that
saw
we have to be careful there.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, it's also another aspect of the perpetual revolution. Well, I guess we really have exhausted the topic. Yeah, trigger warning. I'm gonna plug my channel. Um, Essentially, I finally got a personalized link, YouTube/C/freedom alternative in one word. Trigger warning is an extremely extreme triggering channel, significantly less politically correct than I am here. You'll hear a lot of stuff that can genuinely offend you, and I don't care. But other than that, I guess hopefully see you around next week. I might slip off the map next week. I don't know for sure yet, but I might slip off the map. It's definitely going to be a show on July 31st, sorry, but I'm not convinced that there will be one on July 24th. I'll let you all know somewhere during this weekend. And I guess that's it. Mr. Gunnarsson, any final message?
Trigger warning, drugs and addiction, take the red pill.
Take the red pill. Goodbye, everyone.